Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files, where we're going to talk about Eldorado by ELO. So this one is being done mainly because, the One Step just came out. Last year they came out with a Supervinyl version as well. And those are going to be the two primary ones that I'm going to be focusing on and doing a comparison on. But I also have another one and I'll go over the options that I have here that I'm going to be listening to. But, the primary thing was to see here was, is the One Step better than the Supervinyl? So, for example, if you already have the Supervinyl, is it worth jumping to the One Step? So, let's get into this. Oh, before I get too deep in, please, I just want to kind of run off the little promo stuff for me. So, please, if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. If you want to know when the new videos come out, hit that alert bell, and check me out on social media, which all my links are in the description. And I've been doing a better job of going on to at least Facebook in my Facebook group, True Audio Files, but I need to honestly still work on getting onto Instagram and Twitter. I have accounts there as well. I just haven't been as heavy promoting on that one or on those ones, I should say, or posting on those. So, all right, got that out of the way. Let's talk about Eldorado and which versions I've listened to and which ones I've compared in this shootout. And so the first one that I have here, I don't know exactly how early it is. It's certainly an early pressing, though. It's definitely a 70s pressing. I'm thinking it's pretty early based on the stampers that I saw, but on this. But I know it's pre-barcode, which means it's pre-early 80s. So I would venture a guess that it's probably mid to late 70s pressing, probably. In pretty good shape. I mean, it's not perfect, but, it was in decent shape. Then, as mentioned before, I have the Supervinyl version, which hopefully it'll focus in on that, and you can see where it says that it's the Supervinyl. I've also got number 1815 of the Supervinyl as well. And that is a 33 RPM, just so you know and understand the comparisons here. And then finally, last, but, certainly not least, is the One Step that just got released last week or started shipping last week. I have a number 225. Again, I know some of you are probably going to complain, a number doesn't matter, but it does to some people, so that's what I care about. And I'm sure I've got one of the lower numbers there just because I've had that thing on back order since I first heard it got announced. It's probably been 2 or 3 years now. I can't even remember, but it's been forever. I think there was a point where they were talking about it being discontinued and not going to be happening, but I'm glad to see that they finally did release it and brought it out this year. So, how I usually do these things, I didn't stray too far from the normal formula that I have here. I typically listen to the newest release that I've got first all the way through. Like in this case, the One Step, I listened to all the tracks all the way through, trying to decide, because in the end of the day, I want to just maybe compare a couple of tracks that probably are going to give me the best sense of the differences between the different pressings. And in this case, it was sort of it was kind of 2.5 tracks. I mean, I did the Eldorado Overture and then Can't Get You Out of My Head. And then I did Mr. Kingdom as the second, if you will, quote-unquote, second track. Like I said, I first listened to the One Step in this shootout. I had already listened to the Supervinyl when it first came out, whenever it was last year, and really enjoyed the sound of that one. I thought it sounded really good. So, the biggest differences in terms of technologies anyways between the One Step and the Supervinyl are the process in which the One Step was made. So there's basically less steps to the final product on the One Step in comparison to the standard Supervinyl. The Supervinyl is done in a normal process where they make the mother, the father, the mother, and then the basically the pressing plates, and they can make, tons and tons of plates off of the, I guess it's the mother or the father. I apologize. I don't remember the exact process on that in terms of the terminology. But anyways, there's an extra step or two, in other words, on the standard pressing process when they created the Supervinyl one. So same vinyl formula, so the quality of the vinyl is still very good. They still use a similar cutting process, or the same cutting process, but it's a 33 1/3 as opposed to the 45 that the one step is. So 45 RPM. The biggest advantage it's going to give you is that it's going to give you less possibility of distortion as you get closer in to the center, so less intergroove distortion, but less distortion in general. The drawback can be, though, that you get more surface noise, but that's one of the advantages of using the Supervinyl, because it's very, very quiet vinyl, and that was certainly the case here. So getting all the technology out of the way, getting all the technology information out of the way, let's talk about what they sound like, because in the end of the day, that's what really matters most, right? So, as I mentioned, I listened to the one step first, and thought it sounded really good, especially the first few tracks. They seemed like they were super dynamic, super punchy. You had the great deep bass. It was almost to the point where it was too much, in my opinion, and that's all we can go on. But I thought it was really, I think Mofi in general does a really good job of getting to that point where it's almost too much bass, but it just seems like a good level, and it's just not too much, not overpowering, but still present, and you still know it's there. And I think that's definitely been the case here with this cut. And overall clarity I thought was great. There was definitely a good amount of high end, nice air, good sound stage. Overall, I don't think this is really an audiophile level recording, so I don't know if the sound stage is as good as it could be, but I think, again, that's probably more the recording, not the mastering here, and I'll get into why I think that in a little bit. So, but overall, thought it sounded really great. So then I listened to the early pressing, the mid-70s, maybe up to very, very early 80s pressing, whichever one it is. I think it's a mid to late 70s pressing. Anyway, I thought it sounded good. If I hadn't heard the one step, I would have thought that, this sounds great. I think it has that typical 70s sound, or early record cutting sound. And what I mean by that is, generally speaking, so they can accommodate all record players that would potentially play these, including the cheap, like kid-style record players. They tend to roll off the highs and the lows, and maybe don't have quite as much quite as much in dynamic range as maybe some of the audiophile level recordings will. They'll maybe compress it a little bit more. I think that was probably the case here, although I don't think there was a ton of compression used. Obviously not in comparison to what you see on today's masterings by any stretch, to today's standard, major label masterings when they over-compress. But there was certainly some, it felt like there was maybe a little bit more compression than what you had on the one step. And, the highs were definitely rolled off. The lows, they definitely weren't quite as deep and quite as prominent, but they were still there. They were, they weren't hidden. They were still pretty good. In the mid-range, I would say the mid-range definitely stood out to me, as it seemed like it was maybe a little bit better than the one step. You could argue that either way, I guess, but the one thing that may take away from what I'm saying there is the overall sound, though, to me just came across maybe as a little bit muffled and veiled. And maybe that's because of the fact that there wasn't as much high end on it. But it just seemed like when all the instruments started playing and when everything started playing, it just kind of all got mushed together and wasn't quite as coherent and as defined as what you'd find on the one step. So still great sounding, really like it. And, but you can hear a clear difference between the one step and the early pressing. It was pretty obvious. And I would say the only complaint that I could see people having with the one step is maybe it's a little brighter than someone would like, but I personally prefer that, and I think it kind of adds to the airiness to it, if you will, the separation between the instruments and the vocals and things like that. And I think all the elements of the recording are more prevalent in the one step, and they seem more obvious and clear in that. So then I put on the Supervinyl, and I've got to tell you, it sounds spectacular as well. I mean, it has... Now, the one thing I will also say, too, is sometimes Mobile Fidelity, when they do different cuttings or different versions of, or pressings of releases like Eldorado, and Pearl is another example where they actually did a 45 RPM and a one step, is sometimes they'll have different people mastering. In this case, though, it was done by the same exact people doing both versions. So that was one of the things I noticed on Pearl. The 45 RPM versus the one step is you could hear some of the EQ decisions were different on those, where it sounded almost identical. Maybe there's some slight subtle differences in EQ. It did seem like there may have been a little bit more openness to it, maybe, and that's attributed to the potential less distortion on the 45, and also cutting out a step or two in the pressing process, so you're closer to the mastering and the cutting of the record. So there was definitely, I'm not going to say there wasn't a difference between the Supervinyl and the one step. I'm not sure, I guess it all depends on, how important this record is to you, how important getting the absolute best sounding one out there is to you. I mean, if it's absolutely crucial that you get the best sounding version, I would definitely go with the one step if you can get that. I'm sure they're still available, but if the one, I think that you, on the secondary market, you can still get the Supervinyl for pretty affordable pricing, and it's definitely your best value because it's by far cheaper than the one step. And I think you're going to be happy with it. I don't know if there's going to be a better sounding version of the album than the Supervinyl besides the one step. If you guys know of any that you feel maybe outperform the Supervinyl in one step, please let me know in the comments below, because I honestly, I don't have a ton of experience with a lot of the different pressings of this one, as some people might, but I got the impression that, I mean, the Supervinyl sounds spectacular. The one step just takes it maybe a little bit of a notch above. So they sound very, very similar, though. So final verdict here is, if you already have the Supervinyl, or you can get your hands on the Supervinyl for a lot less than the one step, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with it. And it sounds great. I think it probably sounds better than any other version besides the one step. I can only go by the experience of the one I have here. It definitely sounds better than that pressing. But, if you're wanting the ultimate and you need to have the best sounding version out there, one step is definitely going to be that one. Maybe on a more resolving system than mine. Mine's probably mid to mid-high range level of equipment. Maybe on something a little higher end than mine, it'll be even more noticeable. But I think on, mid-level gear or lower, I'm not even sure if you're going to notice much, if any, of a difference. So, it might be your best bet just to get the Supervinyl if you can get your hands on that for cheaper than the one step. I think you'd be happy with that. And, less flipping, too. You only got 2 sides instead of 4. So there's going to be some advantage there. So that's my take on it. Again, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Do you have other copies that you've compared to either the Supervinyl or the one step and you think they are better than those? Let me know in the comment section below. I really love to hear your take on it. I want to hear your feedback, want to hear your input, But, that's what I have to say. One step is definitely better. Supervinyl is super, super, super close. And from an EQ perspective, they're nearly identical. So I think that you'll be happy with either one of them. So if you can get a cheap copy of Supervinyl, go for it. But again, let me hear your thoughts. And again, hit that like button if you like this, and subscribe and do all that other stuff. But that is my video for this week. I hope you're having a great week. Thank you very much for watching, and you have a great week, and we'll see you next time around.